The State Department issued an urgent warning overnight telling all Americans in Iraq to leave the country immediately.
Escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran are raising fears of conflict in the Middle East.
The U.S. and Iran may be on the verge of a major military conflict after an American airstrike killed a top Iranian commander.
Earlier, dozens of Iranian lawmakers chanted "Death to America" as they met in Parliament.
Well, moving now to international stories, a volley of rockets slammed into an Iraqi airbase north of Baghdad on Sunday, where U.S. forces have been based.
We start with this breaking news. A Ukrainian aircraft with 180 passengers on board has reportedly crashed.
Iran's military says the country unintentionally shot down that Ukrainian jetliner.
As long as I'm president of the United States, Iran will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Good morning.
Some breaking news. ET can confirm basketball legend Kobe Bryant is dead at the age of 41.
Actor Chadwick Boseman, star of the groundbreaking and blockbuster film Black Panther, dead at the age of 43.
The great Alex Trebek, the host of Jeopardy for so many years, died this morning.
Taiwan is on high alert over a mysterious viral pneumonia that struck a Chinese city and infected 59 people so far.
We are taking a closer look at the rise in flu cases in Texas.
Scott, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is confirming the first case of human-to-human transmission in the United States of the novel coronavirus.
Tonight, a rapidly evolving public health emergency, with Massachusetts confirming its first case of coronavirus in Boston, the 8th in the U.S. so far.
I don't have no more tears, honestly. I've cried enough. I've cried enough. I'm here for one reason, for my brother's honor. He was murdered.
9 minutes on that man's neck when his face was up against the curb and being crushed.
The nation erupted into scenes of chaos, violence, and widespread destruction into the early morning hours. Dozens of American cities up in flames after some protests turned into riots.
Our lives matter. Black lives matter.
Chinese authorities say they're investigating a viral pneumonia outbreak, and there's speculation that it could be linked to a SARS virus that killed hundreds of people in 2003.
According to local health officials in the most populous city in central China, 27 people fell ill to a strain of viral pneumonia. Among them, 7 are in severe condition. Officials say investigation and cleanup are ongoing at a local seafood market where the first case appeared. All patients have been isolated. An emergency notice from local health officials on Monday called the cases unexplained pneumonia, spurring talks on Chinese social media that it could be linked to severe acute respiratory syndrome or SARS.
The World Health Organization says a mysterious new virus detected in the Chinese city of Wuhan is likely to be from the same family that produced the deadly SARS and MERS outbreaks.
The virus broke out in Wuhan at the end of December, but it's also since been detected in Thailand and Japan. And while the Chinese government says it's spreading from animal to humans, scientists here say human-to-human transmission can't be ruled out. Chinese authorities pinpointing its source to this food market. Dozens have been infected, but experts here believe the actual figure is closer to 1,700 cases.
So at this stage, what we are aware of is that the virus has been identified as a coronavirus in some of the affected cases. There's still a lot of work being done to try to work out exactly what this coronavirus strain is.
This is the coronavirus, a member of the coronavirus family. It's a perfect model.
But one professor of viruses says this new strain doesn't look as deadly.
Flu is now widespread in almost every single state, and nearly 10 million people have become ill so far.
Now to your health at 8 o'clock. The flu widespread now in all 50 states. 32 children have died. Others face severe complications, including the story of one little girl. I told you about her yesterday. She's now blind.
So we're not dealing with high numbers at the moment. If this were flu, we'd be 100 times more than that. You know, that would be worrying. But this is not flu, this is corona. So I'm concerned, but I'm not over worried about it.
think the volcano just erupted.
Authorities in the Philippines are warning that a volcano near the capital could be on the verge of a dangerous eruption, while the Taal volcano, about 60 kilometers south of Manila, began spewing ash and lava on Sunday.
Tens of thousands of people living in nearby towns have been evacuated. Rain mixed with volcanic ash has coated the roads in thick mud, making driving treacherous.
It's difficult to get food because we can't use the vehicle since it's muddy, and we can't even clean it since there's no water.
Entire towns were covered in gray. They look like a black and white photo.
Well, the Philippine government has ordered roughly that 500,000 people to evacuate the area so far. Only about 18,000 people are currently in evacuation shelters. And the Philippine government is urging anyone who has evacuated not to go back home, again, for the fear of another imminent eruption.
While in China tonight, the urgent effort to contain the virus. Passengers arriving at the Beijing airport met by health officials in hazmat suits. Crowds at the entrance to this train station protecting themselves with masks. And in the city of Wuhan, where the outbreak began, patients now in isolation, all trains and planes out of that city halted just tonight.
Drastic measures to halt the spread of that deadly virus. Wuhan, China, ground zero for the outbreak, now under lockdown. Most of the 17 dead and more than 500 sickened are in Wuhan.
As of Thursday morning, the city has been cut off from the rest of the country. Trains, flights, buses, and ferries have been canceled. Even public transport within Wuhan has ground to a halt. Hospital wards have had to deal with hundreds of cases. But so far, the World Health Organization has refrained from declaring a global health emergency.
Already yesterday, the authorities have issued a travel warning urging people not to travel to Wuhan and also not to leave the city. And now, of course, the city is in lockdown. It's isolated. That's a pretty radical decision. Just have to look, it's 11 million people living there. And also from the space, I mean, it's basically like putting Greater London area under lockdown.
Wuhan is in virtual lockdown. In this city of 11 million people, you're not allowed to enter any public space without a mask. All public transport has been closed. The last flights in were already half empty. The final train services were also eerily quiet. Normally the Lunar New Year rush would mean you can't get a ticket.
Patients in isolation units being treated by doctors in biohazard suits. Pharmacies struggling to keep masks on the shelves. The city of 11 million now halting all public transportation and outbound flights.
The Wuhan shutdown has made this emergency suddenly very real for people right across China, triggering memories of the 2002 SARS outbreak, which led to more than 600 deaths.
Doctors outside Seattle today revealed new details about the first American patient who is being kept in isolation. He was transported in this unit. Teams in protective suits using a robot with a stethoscope to care for the man.
Thankfully, our patient is doing relatively well.
Officials now saying that patient's first stop in the U.S. was Seattle. His connecting flight was abroad. The CDC funneling all passengers arriving from Wuhan through 5 U.S. airports with mandatory screening.
It's an earthquake. The earth is shaking from. Exit the house!
Earthquake, guys. Earthquake. Look, look, look. Jesus, guys. Live right now. Earthquake. Earthquake.
A reported 7.7 magnitude earthquake between Cuba and Jamaica. That earthquake reportedly felt here in South Florida. Chopper 4 over the Daytran Center in Kendall near Dadeland Mall. We have seen people outside of the buildings there and streets shut down in the wake of the reported earthquake. And a similar scene.
800 Americans are believed still to be trapped in Wuhan, China, and a growing number of American airlines are now suspending flights to the region.
After 19 hours of travel, 195 Americans touched down at this military base in Riverside, California.
Tonight, Delta is joining American and United suspending some flights to China. It comes as the White House is considering suspending all flights there. Tonight, 5 Americans have contracted the coronavirus, and we know, according to the CDC, 165 possible cases are still out there. But across the United States, health officials say the overall risk is still relatively low tonight.
Good evening. Welcome to ESPN Sports Center. Zuba Mahenti. I'm Michael Lees. Breaking news in this Sunday afternoon. 5-time NBA champion, former league MVP Kobe Bryant died earlier this afternoon in Los Angeles in a helicopter crash. News reports are just coming in. Among multiple victims, Kobe Bryant on that helicopter.
Well, it's still overwhelming. It's still fresh.
I think for me, it's just hard to talk about Kobe. Kobe Bryant was some of the greatest athletes of our world, of this generation's athlete.
Boy, it's gonna be tough, Skip.
Yep.
Because it feels like a family member passed, a real close family member. Because I think the thing is, for the last quarter century, we watched Kobe Bryant grow up before our eyes.
We did.
We watched a 17-year-old kid come into the NBA and become a champion, become a husband, become a father, become one of the all-time great players in NBA history. When I got the news, I'm like, somebody's, because sometimes you get things like this, somebody's passing, they're like, this can't be true. So I jump on it, I'm scouring. And I don't see it coming across the news anywhere, so I say, there's no way it's true. And then all of a sudden it starts to flow in. And then you realize, yeah, this is true.
He laughed a lot more than people realized. He told a lot of jokes more than people realized. He'd sting you whenever he could because that was his way. He was a guy that, he was a great basketball player. He was a great father. He loved his wife, and that's obviously tremendously. He was a great friend.
I couldn't see him as a celebrity, nor just an incredible basketball player. He was my sweet husband and the beautiful father of our children. He was mine. He was my everything.
3 minutes to play. Shot clock is down to 5. Bryant goes to work. Bryant the drive. Oh! Kobe Bryant on a run.
You hold people down and shoot them. Oh! There it is. Couldn't hold him down. That's Kobe Bryant. That was a backdoor move by the numbers. Hit the post, backdoor the guy from the wing. He's maybe better than a lot of backups in the NBA center. Kobe Bryant.
He certainly has a lot of skills, and you see that. But he's got a lot of confidence, and I think it's just a matter of time for him. You realize how good he is. He's actually in his second year of college, and certainly he's learned a lot. He's in a top league actually, and he's certainly going to learn a lot more. He's going to be a lot better if he keeps improving.
Bryant, 4 to shoot. Puts it up. Puts it in.
Given the schedule, but he says now with all the injuries, that expectation might be a bit too much.
Kobe Bryant. Rockets get back well on defense. Here's Daddy pumping into Kobe.
One jacket. He's throwing out the dinghy. He said, everybody get on board here.
Third try. The Lakers lead by a couple. Kobe again, right there. 18 years in the league. That was nice. That was nice. A worker. Double, triple, up, underscores. The Duke Haslam. Bryant with 1 on the shot clock.
Step to the side. You don't want to step backwards. You want to go straight up when you shoot. Here's Kobe. So important to get the guys when the game first starts. Don't let them start feeling good for their 13th win of the year. Try to get 4 games above 500. Henderson did. Shot clock winding down. Hand in the face.
This is picture-perfect defense, making them work. He elevates, you contest to the face.
But his mindset wasn't that way. His mindset was, listen, all Kobe cared about was defense. When he knew that me and he was going to play together, he was like, I don't care about the offense. I just know that we're two dogs on the both ends. It's going to be number 10 and number 9 on each side of the floor, and defensively, we're going to be dogs. And so to be able to play with a guy who had everything offensively, who could have just demanded us to give him the ball every time down, was worried about defense in the Olympics. Come on, bro. What am I going to do? I'm going to follow suit and follow the leader.
Still waiting for a big smile out of you. You're up 2-0. What's the story? Are you not happy, or you're only half happy, or?
Still to be happy about.
You're up 2-0.
Job's not finished. Job finished.
Tap by Brandon Bass, and Kobe's going to go back and get it.
He hurt his finger.
Yes, he did. Oh, this is something you do not want to see, and he is hurting right now. Boy, in a hushed silence immediately. This entire arena.
It's probably out of place, and he'll have head athletic trainer Gary Vitti put it back in place. You can see just there it went. As soon as he buckled his knees, it was a done deal.
Back in. How about that? Isn't that great?
That's why
what a tough son of a gun,
for 20 years. I mean, this isn't the first time he's had something like that. He's had his fingers dislocated. He goes over to the athletic trainer Gary Vitti, puts it back in place. He goes back out on the floor and he plays.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like those two guys have done it a million times. He just went back. Gary knew what to expect. And now he and Tim are laughing about it. Kobe's like, hey, no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal.
Again, going to work, falls down. Again, he's struggling. He's going to stay down there for a bit. Trying to massage that left ankle a little bit. Harrison Barnes picks up the foul. Warriors are out of fouls. He is hurting, but the Lakers down by 2, and they want him and need him at the free throw line. Got it. Yeah, not backpedaling or whatever he has to do to get to the other end. If, in fact, he gets to the other end before a foul, maybe. Made him. Lakers might foul. They might foul to get him out of the game. That's they have to. Yeah. Kobe's coming out. Yeah, I mean, that's the Achilles. I shouldn't say that. That's a foot injury. Yeah. So Kobe Bryant cannot continue. And the crowd. The ovation. And he's going to, I would assume he'd go straight to the locker room. Don't ever question the heart, the emotion, the grit, the tenacity of that guy.
There's growing concerns about the dangerous coronavirus from China. The number of cases has gone from a few dozen last week to nearly 300 now, and health officials have confirmed that the virus can spread from person to person.
The World Health Organization is holding an emergency meeting tomorrow to talk about this virus as more and more people get sick in Asia. And now we're learning this morning that the number of deaths is also growing. This morning, a major development as U.S. officials work to learn more about the mysterious new coronavirus and keep it out of the country. Now we're learning of new cases indicating that the virus has the potential to spread from human to human, proving that it does not only spread from animals to humans. At least 14 healthcare workers in China have now contracted the virus after treating infected patients.
A doctor at the hospital in Wuhan, where this all began, has been speaking to the BBC and said the virus is now spreading at an alarming rate. The hospitals have been flooding with thousands of patients who wait hours to see a doctor. You can imagine their panic. Normally, Wuhan is a great place to live and we're proud of our work, but I'm scared because this is a new virus and the figures are worrying.
This morning, we're also learning new details about a deadly plane crash in Istanbul, Turkey. Video shows the flight landing in wet weather, then disappearing into a ditch. Passengers scrambled to safety through a gaping crack in the fuselage.
This passenger says he was seated in row 25 and the plane broke apart in row 26. He says even though he was hurt, he guided other passengers to safety. Security camera footage shows the plane's hard landing in the rain. Istanbul's governor says the bad weather caused the aircraft to slide off the runway. This is the third time a Boeing 737 flight run by Turkey's Pegasus Airlines has skidded off a runway in the past 2 years.
The latest on the novel coronavirus, the U.S. government is now preparing to evacuate nearly 400 Americans stranded on a cruise ship in Japan.
Many look forward to a cruise vacation, but these folks have been stuck on this ship for a week and a half. And when they get back to the U.S., they will go back into quarantine.
All this as we're learning of the first death from the virus outside of Asia. A Chinese man dying in Paris.
San Diego taking no chances. County public health officials declaring health and local emergencies out of an abundance of caution after 2 people who were on an evacuation flight from China tested positive for the virus.
The number of people infected with the coronavirus has surged past the 70,000 mark. Here are the latest figures from the Chinese government. It's reporting just over 2,000 new cases today. That's a slight increase after 3 days of lower numbers. And there have been 105 new deaths from the disease, bringing the total number of dead to about 1,800 since the outbreak began 2 months ago.
The staggering number of locusts are causing chaos in East Africa. Some experts are raising the possibility that the gigantic swarms could make their way to China if the region fails to get a handle on the outbreak.
East Africa has been suffering from hundreds of thousands of desert locusts for months. The overwhelming number of insects are wreaking havoc on crops and pasture there. Experts in China say it's less likely the swarms move all the way to China now, but have raised the possibility that the country could be hit by a wave of the insects if the outbreak isn't brought under control by the summer. Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia are reporting their worst infestations in decades. Experts say spraying pesticides from sky is the most effective way to combat the swarms, but unfortunately, countries in the region don't have the right resources.
A verdict reached in the closely watched trial of Harvey Weinstein, the once powerful Hollywood producer who was charged with 5 felony counts of predatory, criminal sexual assault, and rape.
Ian Woods is in New York for us. The verdict has come in the Harvey Weinstein sex assault trial, and he has been found guilty. Ian, tell us more.
He has been found not guilty of the 2 most serious charges, but 3 guilty verdicts in the lesser charges. Let me run those through for you now.
A virus spreading, planes grounded, trade stalling, and even sporting events cancelled. Inevitably, markets are tumbling, but the sell-off has turned into the worst week since the global financial crisis more than a decade ago. Smiles for the starting bell in New York, but share prices slumped seconds later. A week ago, they were at an all-time high.
What's the stop?
And in London, the 100 biggest companies are worth a staggering £210 billion less than they were just 7 days ago.
How many are you trying to sell?
The World Health Organization said the risk of a global spread of the virus was now very high, though containment was still possible. And around the world, countries are facing up to the growing challenge. Japan's Prime Minister has asked all schools to close from Monday until late March to prevent the spread. In Iran, the number of cases has gone up around 50% in 24 hours. 34 people have died from the disease. The main Friday prayers were cancelled for the first time in decades to contain the infection. New Zealand's health minister, meanwhile, has confirmed his country's first case today. And more worryingly, the first case in sub-Saharan Africa has been reported in Nigeria. The patient, an Italian citizen who flew into Lagos from Milan.
Well, there have been sharp falls in global stock markets because of concerns over coronavirus. The total cost of this week's plunge in values has been more than $5 trillion. In the UK, the FTSE 100 closed the week 13% down. That's the biggest fall since 2011.
deadly tornado sweeping through one of those Super Tuesday states, Tennessee.
At least 2 tornadoes touched down, including one that caused heavy damage near downtown Nashville. We're learning that at least 7 people are now confirmed dead in the metro area. Emergency crews are dealing with about 40 collapsed buildings.
The deadly twister blocking roads, destroying cars, and downing utility poles. Plunging people into darkness, leaving more than 50,000 residents without power.
It's a scene of utter destruction in Metro Nashville this morning.
The cement front of the AutoZone actually collapsed onto itself.
Our Nashville station, WTBF, saw the damage firsthand. Crushed cars filled the streets, and Whit Laxton's car was smashed by a fallen sign.
I think I'm lucky to be alive, and I've got a lot to process.
Oh my God!
The tornado filled the sky as it churned across Tennessee's state capital just before 1 a.m. Lightning and power surges were visible, leaving tens of thousands without electricity and many people without roofs over their heads. Firefighters and police are already searching the debris for trapped victims.
Reality has hit. Coronavirus isn't just a problem for China's economy, but for all our fortunes.
As outbreaks of the virus have multiplied around the globe, it's become clear that the economic disruption will be equally widespread. Now, from car makers like Jaguar Land Rover to electronics giant Apple, global manufacturing supply chains are being hit by factory shutdowns in China. But demand is also affected. Efforts to contain the disease has hit travel and tourism. British Airways says it can no longer predict what its profits will be after flights to China and now Italy have been disrupted.
As for a vaccine, don't expect one to be ready for widespread use for at least a year.
In the New York City area, the number of cases doubling again in the last 24 hours, and the steps being taken in the city right now. Meantime, in Boston at this hour, the scene unfolding there. Several people at a hotel taken to the hospital for immediate screenings.
Tonight, authorities shutting down a street in Boston, transporting dozens of people from the Marriott Hotel directly to the hospital to be tested for the new coronavirus.
We now have new information that there have been 3 confirmed cases of coronavirus of Boston residents tracing back to the same Biogen meeting. This is a rapidly evolving situation.
In New York, about 4,000 people, more than half in the New York City area alone, now under quarantine.
This is like a flu on steroids.
The number of new cases doubling again today, jumping to 44, including a doctor who works at the same hospital where the sick Westchester lawyer was initially taken. That attorney frequently traveled by train to Grand Central Terminal. Tonight, his rabbi telling his congregation, "I have the virus and am doing reasonably well." But caution those who've had contact with him to seek counsel from your health practitioner.
A man who's in his 50s is a DC resident, started exhibiting symptoms in late February. He presented and was admitted to a DC hospital on March the 5th. At this point, he appears to have no history of international travel and no close contacts with a confirmed case. He remains hospitalized.
Outside China, Italy is the country with the most reported infections and deaths from the coronavirus. So, in a desperate bid to stop the disease from spreading, the entire country is now in a lockdown. It's the most severe restriction on movement in Italy since World War II.
The announcement triggered a rash of panic buying here in Rome as shoppers in masks swarmed supermarkets in fear of a countrywide lockdown. The extreme measures after the number of cases jumped once again. Now the most infections outside of China. More than 9,000 cases, 463 people have died.
Anger at the decision to put millions of people in quarantine led to a riot in a prison with 6 people killed. That was on Sunday when the death toll from the coronavirus in Italy jumped by 133.
In East Africa, the air carries 2 plagues. Locusts, swarms with as many as 50 billion insects, As COVID-19 threatens the people, locusts threaten people's livestock and food.
They are being a menace, eating our grass and even getting into our homes. When we slaughter our livestock, we find locust faces in their stomachs. Without a doubt, they are affecting our health, our animals' health, and the environment.
In February, 8 East African countries experienced an initial swarm, the largest for parts of the region in 70 years. And now, a new wave is 20 times larger than the first wave.
There are swarms that are, it's not uncommon to be, let's say, the size of Manhattan in New York City. So they can be very big. In one day, that swarm can eat the same amount of food as everybody in New York and California combined.
While the world fights the coronavirus, much of East Africa is battling a second threat with no reprieve in sight.
George, I'm shocked to learn that these locusts have actually been spotted in China. How is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. As my kids would say, Pat, that is cray-cray. I mean, it really is crazy. But the officials from the Food and Agriculture Organization warned the Chinese authorities on February 11th that a swarm of locusts leaving Africa would fly across the Red Sea, across Europe, and into the westernmost province of China.
We also have some breaking news on efforts to contain the coronavirus in a city hit hard. New Rochelle, New York, just north of New York City.
New Rochelle has over 100 confirmed cases. It's a suburb just on the edge of New York City, about 73,000 people or so. And it's been linked to what the governor has described as the most difficult outbreak to contain. All this linked to a lawyer who lives out there, who works in Midtown Manhattan, who was tested positive for the virus about a week or so ago. And most of the cases have spread from him and his family through community contact, through local contact. How he first acquired the virus is still unknown.
Well, passengers have begun disembarking from the virus-hit Grand Princess in Oakland, California. After 21 people tested positive for the virus, they are being taken to a containment area for testing. 23 people who required medical care were transported to hospital. American passengers will be taken to military bases for testing and 2-week quarantines. Several hundred foreign passengers will be repatriated home with chartered flights. One couple are suing the cruise liner for $1 million for continuing to sail despite knowing about infections on a previous voyage.
And fans, due to unforeseen circumstances, the game tonight has been postponed. You are all safe. And take your time in leaving the arena tonight and do so in an orderly fashion. Thank you for coming out tonight. We are all safe.
The news that Rudy Gobert was, we will assume, patient zero, if you will, within the NBA. That news came this evening prior to the fact that the NBA has suspended play for the foreseeable future.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Rick Aaron. We begin with breaking news tonight. The National Basketball Association has suspended the season after a Utah Jazz player tested positive for the COVID-19 virus.
Donovan Mitchell from the Jazz has tested positive for the coronavirus.
I think Turner Sports and CBS got to close down March Madness, man, because even if there's no fans, you can't have these players breathing on each other for 2 weeks. Even if they're at a hotel, they're going to be in different cities around the country. And I hate to say it, I think we're going to have to shut down March Madness until we know more.